Stop. Whatever you're doing right now, stop. What I'm about to say isn't for everyone listening, but it is for you. You've been carrying a weight that no one around you can understand, a question that quietly echoes through every sleepless night and every deep breath you let out when no one's watching. You've worked harder than the people walking beside you, and still, the door that should have opened feels locked by an invisible latch. There's a reason for that. There's a reason you feel this way, and tonight you're finally going to hear the answer. Please sit with me for a moment. Set aside the urgency. Set aside the need to fix everything. By the time we reach the end of this conversation, you will recognize the 4 signs that have been showing up in your life and understand what they really mean for your destiny. You will identify the single pattern that has been blocking what you've been searching for, and more importantly, you will receive the revelation of what happened in the spiritual realm to bring you to this moment of clarity. You are not here by accident, and the reason this moment found you is because your season of waiting is coming to an end. You've noticed, you can feel it. For months, maybe years, you've been living in a state of constant alert without knowing exactly what's coming. You wake up in the dead hours of the night, right when the world goes silent and your mind starts racing. You look at your long-time friendships and sense an emptiness, a distance that wasn't caused by fights or hurt feelings, but by a quiet shift in your own frequency. Conversations that once felt vibrant now sound like echoes. You feel strangely sensitive, as if your skin has become too thin for this noisy world. Things you used to brush off now hit you with a visceral intensity. Many would call this exhaustion, loneliness, or even a detour on the path. But I'm here to tell you that what you're experiencing isn't a decline. It's calibration. You are being adjusted for something that requires a capacity you didn't yet have. The insomnia isn't a disorder, it's a call to be awake while the world sleeps, so you can hear what can't be spoken during the day. Your detachment isn't coldness, it's protection. You're letting go of what no longer belongs in your new structure, so that when the attention, you need to prepare yourself now. I have prepared material for those who doubt their own calling from God and still do not have confirmation. Are you one of the chosen? We'll give you that clarity. These are the 7 signs of the language of the calling, marks of God in the story of every chosen one, so you can reread your story and recognize the purpose sealed over you before the foundation of the world. Stop calling coincidence what is actually a calling. Stop silencing the sacred restlessness. Stop postponing the answer you feel. Your window is closing. And a chosen one who does not recognize the calling does not walk in purpose. More than 10,000 people have already read the 7 signs and received the conviction they had been seeking for years. They were just like you. They felt something no one understood. They lived in silent doubt, and they discovered it was real. And it had a name. The offer is open only this month. Access the link in the pinned comment now before doubt steals another year from your calling. Opportunity arrives, your hands won't be full of what should have been left behind. Your fingers typing those 3 numbers is your spirit saying yes to what is being revealed. It's the smallest form of agreement, but it's the most powerful because it seals the recognition that you understand the exhaustion was actually preparation. Type 888 now, and then come right back to me, because we need to go deeper into the root of what you've been carrying. What you feel, that sense of carrying the world on your back, is the consequence of an old formation. You spent your whole life believing that your usefulness was your measure. You learned, maybe very early, that to be loved or accepted, you had to be the support, the pillar. The person who never fails. You became a master at holding things up for others, while your own foundation was neglected in the name of duty. You poured an immense hunger, an unwavering dedication, but you poured it along the wrong route, into directions that had no more life to offer you. You aren't tired because you did too little. You're exhausted because you tried to carry what was never yours to bear. And here's the truth no one told you. You were not made to carry that burden. You were made to be the ground where the fruit grows, not the mule hauling someone else's harvest. The root of this exhaustion lies in a belief you were convinced to adopt long ago. The idea that your worth is in what you do, not in who you are. It's time to unlearn that. You've been trying to hold up structures that should have fallen a long time ago, and your exhaustion isn't a sign of weakness. It's the sound of your own soul screaming that the contract you signed with mediocrity has expired. You've become an expert at patching holes, at being the emotional buffer for people who don't even notice you're wearing down. This pattern of trying to carry the world on your back is a heavy inheritance, a defense mechanism you built when, back then, you felt that if you weren't the pillar, the ceiling would collapse on your head. But look at your life now. You're carrying burdens that weren't designed for your stature, trying to feed sources that have dried up, and the reason you can't move forward isn't a lack of effort. It's because you're trying to carry the weight of your destiny with your hands full of responsibilities that aren't yours. The diagnosis is clear. You're operating from a survival system that no longer serves your new season of life. Your exhaustion is proof that you're trying to be the provider of an abundance that can only come from a higher source, not from your own sacrificed sweat. To understand what's happening in the depths, picture an ancient garden now, your garden of first love. It's a place where sunlight always touches the ground differently, where the air smells of promises that haven't yet been broken. For years, this garden was neglected. You let weeds grow over the flowers that needed care, and you let others build fences that blocked the very life that was supposed to bloom there. That silent root that was cut back in your story, that moment when your voice was silenced or your intuition was dismissed, was like a dry blow to the base of that garden. What you call loneliness, I call the necessary isolation for the pruning to happen. You weren't abandoned, you were set apart, so the dead roots could be removed, because nothing new can grow if the soil is still occupied by the roots of a past that no longer belongs to you. This pruning hurts because we're removing what was familiar, but we're preparing the soil for what is eternal. Your garden of first love is being cleared, not out of cruelty, but out of a love so deep that it will no longer tolerate you blooming in soil contaminated by the opinions of others, or the fear of disappointing people who never cared about your true essence. Let that recognition settle where it just landed. The act of typing those 3 words is your commitment that you will no longer let your garden lie in ruins while you serve on the outside. Type, steady your stance, and come right back to me, because we need to understand how to sustain this harvest that is coming. And while you do that, I want you to understand your gesture in a new way. If this recognition found resonance in your spirit, if you felt that what was named here is the truth you carried in your chest without having words for it, let your like be your wordless amen, not as a number counter, not as any kind of metric, but as a sacred gesture of agreement. It's your silent signal that what was said was heard, that the light touched the shadow, and that you are at peace with the movement that has begun. Every person who makes this gesture is declaring that they are no longer operating in the dark, but walking, even if slowly, toward total clarity. It's a silent agreement between us, a recognition that what was brought here is not an opinion, but a confirmation of something already written in your own trajectory long before you click to hear this message. Take a deep breath. Let this agreement settle into the part of you that was most tired, and realize that from this moment on, your posture toward the problems that once paralyzed you has changed forever. You no longer have to fight against what isn't yours, because your focus is now entirely on cultivating what is your true purpose, on tending that garden, which, even with the marks of pruning, is beginning to see the first sprout of a new season of hope you never thought you would see again. The real solution to what you're going through isn't found in more effort or in a new survival strategy or in the relentless search for answers that always seem one step ahead of your perception. The solution for the one who has been called to something greater is always a return. It's the return to the rest you walked away from when you started believing the weight of the world was a load meant for your shoulders alone. You've spent too much time trying to prove your worth, trying to build a house on ground that was still being laid, and it's precisely that effort that has drained your vitality. Being chosen doesn't mean carrying more. It means being aligned with the flow already moving around you. It's an acceptance that your identity is not what you produce, but whose you are. When you allow yourself to stop, when you release the ropes you are holding so tightly, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Your peace is not a reward for winning the battle. It is the natural state of someone who understands the victory was decreed before the conflict even began. Accepting this identity is the hardest step because it requires you to abandon the image of yourself that you built in pain. It requires you to see yourself through the eyes of the one who planted you in the middle of the storm, not to be destroyed, but to be forged. You are not a survivor who got lucky. You are someone who was prepared, polished, and refined for a function that no one else in your lineage could fulfill. This acceptance brings a deep silence to your chest, a silence others may interpret as distance, but that you know is your greatest closeness to the truth. From now on, your routine ceases to be a list of tasks to complete and becomes a constant exercise of presence, of observing what the movement of life is inviting you to do, without the anxiety of someone who fears time is running against them. There is, however, an urgency that now manifests through a recognition you cannot ignore. As this matter unfolds here, someone's face rises in your mind. It's not a random face, not a passing image. It's the face of someone who carries marks very similar to your own. Think of that person. It's someone who has been working exhaustively, but who seems to be walking in circles, living a life of silence and sacrifice that no one around them can see or validate. That person is right now in a state of silent exhaustion, holding a weight that isn't theirs, and waiting for a sign that they are not alone. Their face appeared to you now not by accident, but by a clear assignment. Send this message to them, not as advice, but as a delivery. Hand them the key you just received. Sometimes our role as the chosen is to be the channel through which light reaches someone who has already lost hope of finding it on their own. Don't question why this person came to mind. Just recognize that if you were the first to receive, it's because you were the first entrusted with the responsibility to carry comfort forward. Before we move on to the close of this transmission, I want you to do one last thing. Don't do it as someone who hopes or as someone who wishes for change. Do it as someone signing a final contract with your own destiny. By typing these words, you are declaring before yourself and before your history that the time of doubt is over. The weight of the past, the uncertainty of the present, and the fear of what's to come no longer have authority over your identity. You are, finally, taking the post that was prepared for you from the beginning of time. Feel the firmness of these words as you type them. Let your spirit align with the truth you have just proclaimed. From here on, you no longer walk as an orphan of circumstance, but as someone who knows their origin, their purpose, and their final destination. The acceptance of this identity is the final seal that closes the door to any other voice that tries to convince you that you are less than what you were called to be. You are committed, you are commissioned, you are sent. Feel these three truths settle deep into every cell of your being. You were not called to comfort, but to clarity. You were not called to ease, but to authority. You were not called to invisibility, but to manifestation. You carry a weight that for a long time you believed was just the weight of responsibility, but the truth is you were carrying the pieces of a vessel that was not shaped to be carried that way. Look back, just for a second, and recognize the path you've traveled, not as someone looking at a mistake, but as someone observing the soil where the seed had to rot in order to finally let the main root reach the water table that no one else could see. You felt alone, because the path was too narrow to carry the old habits, the old expectations, and the voices of those who, though they love you, do not have the map for the territory you are stepping into now. There are 3 pillars that support the transition you are living through, and I want you to hold them like someone holding a master key. The first pillar is the understanding that your current isolation is not a punishment. It is a table prepared. The second pillar is the revelation that your sensitivity, which you once tried to numb or hide to fit into rough environments, is actually your greatest navigation tool. And the third pillar, the one that scares you the most, is the awareness that you no longer have to prove your loyalty to those who cannot see your essence. Many of you have been going through nights where the clock seems to mark hours that repeat themselves, as if time were trying to communicate something your rational mind still refuses to process. You feel an exhaustion that doesn't come from physical work, but from the constant vigilance of maintaining a facade that no longer serves you. You notice that conversations that once flowed now seem to echo into emptiness, and people who walked beside you seem to have taken directions that no longer make sense for your journey. This happens because your magnetic field has been recalibrated. You stopped emitting the frequency of survival and started tuning into the frequency of purpose. That number is the frequency of abundance that arrives after the desert, the mark of one who crossed through the fire and did not let the smell of smoke cling to their garments. Type 888. This is your signal that you accept the calibration and then come right back to continue this walk. What you have been calling failure is, in fact, strategic pruning. When a tree is pruned, the gardener does not do it out of anger. They do it because they know that if we keep the branches that have already given everything they had, the vital sap will never reach the new fruit ready to sprout. You were trying to save branches that were drying from the inside, spending your most precious energy on directions that led nowhere. Your exhaustion is not a lack of faith, nor is it laziness. It is the result of a system operating at high voltage inside a shell that was not yet ready for such expansion. Let's go a little deeper. Picture, for a moment, an ancient garden, a place where light falls differently, where time seems unhurried. This is the garden of first love, the place where your essence was designed before any trauma tried to rewrite your name. There was a root, a life force that connected you directly to your source of supply. But over the years, layers of dry soil, of others' expectations and of survival, were deposited over that root. You began to believe that to stay alive, you only needed to dig at the surface. You started looking for water in shallow wells, wells that dried up every time the sun beat down a little harder. And here is where the recognition needs to become concrete. Let these 3 words serve as an anchor, a record that you are not just listening, but allowing the revelation to dwell in you. Type, and then come back to me, because we still need to talk about what happens when the root finally touches the center of the earth. When you recognize that your value does not depend on visible results, but on who you are at the origin, the weight of others' expectations begins to fall away, like scales. You realize that your authority does not come from titles or approval or a position of prominence. It comes from your ability to remain at peace when everything around you tries to force you into panic. That is the posture of the chosen. Someone who maintains serenity in the eye of the hurricane, not because the hurricane is over, but because you know the hurricane has no power over your essence. If what we are building here today, in this silent dialogue between what you carry and what I'm confirming to you, has resonated in your soul, let your like be your wordless amen. Not as a number counter, but as a seal of spiritual agreement. It is a simple gesture, but it is your way of saying that what was named here is the truth you have been waiting to hear for so long. We are approaching the final layer, the one where clarity turns into direction. You have been searching for answers for your life, for your next steps, for the dilemmas that seem endless. But the answer was never in something you needed to do or somewhere you needed to arrive. The answer was always a return to that state of rest where you understand that you do not need to force the door open because you are the owner of the house. Everything you have been seeking on the outside, recognition, peace, provision, is only a reflection of what is already installed inside you. And as you process this immensity, I know a specific face has appeared in your mind. Maybe it is someone you see every day and still feel an abysmal distance from, someone who you know deep down is carrying a pain no one sees, someone who is exhausted from fighting against chains they cannot break, someone who, like you, has a mark of destiny, but who right now is living under the shadow of confusion. That person does not need advice, does not need lectures, does not need you to try to fix their life. They only need what you received here. Send this to them, not as a reading recommendation, but as a gift, like handing a lantern to someone walking through a dark tunnel. What we are sealing now is the definitive transition. You are no longer the same person who entered this conversation. What was revealed cannot be unseen, and the truth that was touched cannot be forgotten. You may try to go back to old patterns, but now your spirit will remind you, every time you bend to carry a burden that is not yours, that you were made for something far greater. You are the bearer of a frequency that the world desperately needs, even if the world does not yet know how to name what you carry. Your life is the evidence that light is not just an idea. It is a force, and that force now resides in you with an authority you have never had before. From now on, your prayer is no longer asking for the suffering to stop, but for your vision to stay clear, for you to never forget that your place is not on the periphery, but at the center of your own existence. Before the silence returns, place the final seal on everything we have built in these moments. It is not arrogance, it is recognition. It is your way of taking responsibility for what has been deposited in you, the responsibility of being who you were designed to be, without apology, without dimming your light, and without negotiating your truth. Type slowly, feel each letter, feel the authority of these words settling into your identity. You are the one who was prepared for this moment. You are the one who, even in the face of the greatest storms, found the anchoring needed to remain standing. Your time of invisibility is over, and the time of your manifestation has begun. Do you feel that lightness? It is the mark of what has been restored. The exhaustion you carried for so many years, that feeling that every step was against the wind, is being dissolved by the recognition of who you really are. You no longer have to prove your worth to people who never had eyes to see your heart. You no longer have to hide in the shadows to protect the light you carry, because that light is not yours to keep. It is yours to radiate without effort, without struggle, and without resistance. If anything in everything we have shared here touched the deepest truth of your soul, let your like be your wordless amen, not as a metric for the world, but as a spiritual signature, a silent recognition that what was named here, today, is what you were waiting to find. Now take a deep breath. Let the air fill every space that was once occupied by doubt. You are a channel. You are a meeting point between what was hidden and what is about to manifest with total clarity. Your journey was not marked by chance, but by a series of divine adjustments that, though painful at the time, were only shaping your character so you could bear the weight of the mission entrusted to you. You are committed, you are commissioned, you are sent. In this very moment, in every corner of the world, other souls who walked through the same dark valleys are, like you, receiving this same revelation. You are part of a silent movement, a network of beings awakening to their own authority, and this is the absolute proof that you were never alone in this search. What you feel now is the connection to this great tapestry, where every thread, including yours, is essential for the final design to be revealed. Hold on to that piece. Do not let it slip away when routine tries to pull you back into the noise. You now possess the key. It is sealed. Attention! You need to prepare yourself now. I have prepared material for those who doubt their own calling from God and still do not have confirmation. Are you one of the chosen? We'll give you that clarity. These are the 7 signs of the language of the calling, marks of God in the story of every chosen one, so you can reread your story and recognize the purpose sealed over you before the foundation of the world. Stop calling coincidence what is actually a calling. Stop silencing the sacred restlessness. Stop postponing the answer you feel. Your window is closing, and a chosen one who does not recognize the calling does not walk in purpose. More than 10,000 people have already read the 7 signs and received the conviction they had been seeking for years. They were just like you. They felt something no one understood. They lived in silent doubt, and they discovered it was real. And it had a name. The offer is open only this month. Access the link in the pinned comment now before doubt steals another year from your calling.